The air is perfectly still, carrying the faint, sweet scent of heirloom roses that cling to the weathered wooden trellis of a high attic garden. Far below, the cobblestone streets of the old town have grown quiet, muffled by the gathering dusk of a long, peaceful day. But up here, among the sloping peaks of the gabled roofs and the ancient chimneys, a different kind of time exists. It is a time that does not hurry, measured only by the slow, almost imperceptible unfurling of a velvet petal or the gentle rhythmic breathing of the world as it prepares for a night of deep rest. In this sanctuary tucked away above the clouds, two souls, Kay and Gerda, sit side by side in the fading light. Their bond is not one of loud declarations or restless movement, but of shared silences and the simple, grounding comfort of each other's presence. To look at them is to understand that some things in this world are constant, rooted deeper than the shifting shadows of the valley or the passing of the hours. They sit in the golden honey-light glow of a departing sun, their small hands resting near the wooden boxes where the flower-dusted herbs and the crimson roses thrive in perfect harmony. There is a profound sense of safety here, a feeling that the walls of this attic are thin enough to let in the softest starlight, yet thick enough to keep out the chaotic noise and the heavy weight of the busy world below. You can almost feel the texture of the old wood under your fingertips, polished smooth by years of gentle touch, and the coolness of the evening breeze as it skims over the terracotta tiles of the rooftop. It is a place where the heart finds its center, where every breath you take seems to align with the ancient, steady pulse of the earth itself. The roses seem to lean in toward the center of the room, their heavy heads nodding in the soft draft that enters through the cracked window, as if they are the silent guardians of the peace that settles over this small, elevated kingdom. In this space, even the light behaves with a peculiar liquid grace. It doesn't strike the eye, it bathes the senses in a warm amber warmth that feels like a physical embrace. It turns the simple, floating dust motes into dancing embers of gold, and softens the sharp edges of the old furniture until everything feels like a part of a beautiful, half-remembered dream. Kay looks at the roses, and for a long moment he sees not just flowers, but a living map of every summer they have ever shared, every afternoon spent in the quiet company of the bees and the sun. Gerda watches the way the shadows lengthen across the floorboards, tracing intricate patterns that look like the roots of a great invisible tree, connecting them to the very foundation of the house. There is a secret shared between them, one that doesn't require a single word to be understood. The knowledge that as long as the roses bloom and the attic remains, nothing truly disappears. It is the quiet wisdom of the young, a clarity of soul that knows the infinite value of a single silent moment, and the strength found in a steady, calm heartbeat. The atmosphere is thick with the fragrance of damp earth, sun-warmed bricks, and the subtle musk of old paper from the books stacked in the corner. It is a sensory cocoon, a layer of protection that shields them from the onset of the night and the cold uncertainty of the outside world. As the last sliver of orange light vanishes behind the distant purple hills, the room does not become dark. It is a rich, inviting depth that calls to the spirit to let go of the day's burdens, to leave the weight of every thought at the threshold of the door. Everything in this room is exactly where it belongs. The kettle cooling by the hearth, the soft rhythm of the clock on the wall, and the steady, calm gaze of these two friends. It is a beginning that feels like a homecoming, a gentle pull into a reality where the only requirement is to simply exist, to listen to the silence, and to fade slowly into the embrace of the coming story. You can feel the weight of your own limbs now, mimicking the stillness of the attic. The world outside is vast, but here the space is small, contained and filled with a light that never truly goes out. The air is cool on your skin, but the memory of the sun remains in the wood and the stone, providing a lingering warmth that soothes the nerves. Every breath becomes a little slower, a little deeper, as you watch the first star appear through the glass. It is a flicker of light that promises nothing but rest. The roses have closed their petals for the evening, tucking their vibrant colors away, waiting for the dawn that is still many hours away. In this quietude, the mind begins to drift, untethered from the demands of the clock, floating like a leaf on a still pond, moving toward a place of total tranquility. Yet, Even in this perfect glass-like stillness, there is a subtle, almost invisible shift in the atmosphere. A faint crystalline hum begins to vibrate just beyond the reach of the human ear, a sound that feels like the ringing of a distant bell made of ice. It is as if the horizon itself is whispering a new name, a name carved in frost and carried on the silver wings of a northern wind that has traveled across the great sea. The warmth of the roses remains close to the heart, but the windows begin to hold a different kind of reflection, now one that speaks of vast, shimmering distances, of snow-covered forests that never sleep, and the silent, majestic arrival of a season that changes everything it touches. The attic is safe, the roses are bright, and the room is filled with peace. But far to the north, the great winter is beginning to stir in the hidden reaches of the world, preparing to weave its delicate, icy lace across the glass of our dreams. As you sit within the quiet embrace of the attic, the world outside begins a slow and hypnotic transformation. Through the glass of the small window, the twilight sky has deepened into a soft, velvety violet, and from its vast, silent depths, the first snowflakes begin to descend. They do not fall so much as they drift, weightless and unhurried, tracing invisible spirals in the air. Watch them closely. Each flake is a miniature masterpiece of geometry, a crystalline star born from the clouds, wandering downward with a singular, peaceful purpose. There is a rhythm to their descent, a slow and steady pulse that matches the quiet beating of your own heart. One flake follows another, and then another, creating a cascading veil of white that blurs the sharp edges of the world. The rooftops across the street begin to disappear under a layer of powdered sugar, and the iron street lamps glow like soft, hazy moons behind the thickening curtain of the storm. Now, as you watch this rhythmic dance, allow your own body to find the same stillness as the winter air. Imagine that you are as calm as the frost settling on the pane. Start by bringing your awareness to your shoulders. Feel them as if they were made of solid ice, held tight and rigid by the day's burdens. But now, picture a gentle, radiant warmth, like the glow of the grandmother's hearth, slowly beginning to touch them. As the warmth spreads, the ice begins to yield. It softens, turns to water, and begins to flow away. Feel your shoulders drop, becoming heavy and loose, sinking down into the support beneath you. The tension doesn't just leave. It melts, trickling away like a mountain stream in early spring, leaving nothing but a deep, cool sensation of relief behind. This melting sensation moves down through your arms, flowing past your elbows and into your wrists. Your hands, which have worked so hard today, finally go limp, their fingers curling naturally like the petals of a sleeping rose. The ice in your chest, that tightness that often lingers around the breath, begins to dissolve as well. With every slow exhale, imagine you are breathing out a fine white mist of frost, releasing the last remnants of the world's noise. Your breath becomes a soft, rhythmic hum, a mirror to the wind outside. The warmth moves further down now, reaching your hips and your legs. Feel the heavy muscles of your thighs simply give up their hold. They become soft, sinking deeper into the cushions, as if you were reclining into a drift of the softest, warmest snow imaginable. Even your feet, so often tired and strained, feel a sudden lightness as the ice within them turns to a soothing, liquid calm. You are no longer holding yourself up, the world is holding you. As the body settles into this profound state of release, a remarkable change occurs in the environment. It is the arrival of the absolute silence that only a heavy snowfall can bring. It is not merely the absence of sound, but a positive, living presence of quiet. The snow acts as a vast white blanket, absorbing every echo of the town, every vibration of the distant carts, and every whisper of the wind. The world has been tucked in. If you were to open the window, you would hear nothing but the sound of the silence itself, a soft, muffled thrum that vibrates in the back of the mind like a distant choir. It is a silence so thick and so pure that it feels like a physical substance, a layer of downy feathers pressing gently against the earth. In this silence, the boundaries of the room seem to expand, reaching out to join the infinite stillness of the winter night. You are here, in this room, and you are completely safe. The walls around you are sturdy, the roof above is strong, and the embers in the stove continue to hum a low, comforting song of fire and wood. The cold outside serves only to emphasize the deep, golden warmth that surrounds you. It is a sanctuary where the untwin passage of time has no meaning. The world is still, frozen in a moment of perfect equilibrium, as if the earth itself has decided to take a long, deep breath and hold it. 1. There is nothing you need to do, nowhere you need to go, and no problem that cannot wait until the sun returns to the sky. For now, there is only the white darkness, the soft glow of the lamp, and the incredible healing weight of your own relaxation. You are a part of this stillness, as much a part of it as the snow-covered roses and the sleeping birds in the eaves. As you linger in this deep somatic peace, the mind begins to wander away from the attic, drifting toward the edges of the frozen horizon. We begin to look past the town, past the familiar hills, and toward the wild, untamed territories of the far north. It is a land of folklore and shadow, where the aurora borealis paints the sky in shades of phantom green, and the ice speaks in a language of cracks and groans. This is the realm where the stories of old were born, tales of mountain giants, of spirits that dwell in the blizzard, and of a majestic frozen throne that sits at the very top of the world. The silence of the snow is calling us deeper into the heart of the legend, guiding our spirits toward the great shimmering halls of the north, where the mysteries of winter are guarded by the one they call the Queen. Nested high above the stone-paved streets, where the world's clamor fades into a distant rhythmic hum, lies a sanctuary built of cedar wood, sun-bleached brick, and memory. These are the tiny wooden houses tucked safely under the protective eaves of the great gabled roofs, leaning against one another, like old friends sharing a secret in the twilight. In this elevated kingdom, the sloping ceilings create intimate corners where the shadows are never dark, only soft and velvet-like, shielding the occupants from the vastness of the sky. Here, the heavy oak beams overhead are silvered by age, bearing the gentle weight of 1,000 peaceful winters, their grains holding the echoes of forgotten whispers and the warmth of 1,000 sunrises. It is a place where the air itself feels thicker, filtered through the long history of the house, carrying a stillness that invites you to leave the restlessness of the world behind at the bottom of the narrow winding stairs. You can imagine the small, sturdy doors and the low ceilings that wrap around you like a heavy wooden cloak, providing a sense of enclosure that is both vast in its imaginative reach and perfectly contained in its physical safety. Every knot in the wood, every imperfection in the brickwork tells a story of endurance and quiet peace. Outside the narrow windows of these attic rooms, the secret world of the garden begins to breathe. It is not a garden of sprawling lawns or grand fountains, but a miracle of the humble hearth, a collection of large, deep wooden boxes overflowing with the rich, dark life of the earth itself. As you breathe in, deeply and slowly, the air is saturated with the deep, grounding sense of the herbal world, rising in invisible waves. There is the sharp, clean clarity of rosemary, its needle-like leaves releasing a resinous perfume that seems to clear the mind of all lingering clutter and worry. Beside it, the soft sage-green leaves of thyme and the sweet, peppery notes of basil mingle to create a fragrance that is both earthy and ethereal, reminding the soul of its connection to the soil. But the true heart of this garden belongs to the roses. These are not the fleeting, fragile flowers of a florist's shop, but hardy, heirloom roses with petals as thick and soft as silk velvet. To touch them in your mind is to feel a delicate, cool moisture, a texture so fine it seems to dissolve against the skin like a breath of mist. Their color is a red, so deep and saturated it feels warm to the eye, a living ember amidst the greenery. The scent of these roses is a heavy floral musk that anchors the spirit, a fragrance that speaks of ancient summers, of golden bees, and the unwavering promise of the return of spring. It is a sensory sanctuary where every smell and every texture is a silent reaffirmation of life's quiet beauty and the enduring strength of the natural world. As the evening settles even deeper into the attic's grain, you begin to notice how the very architecture of this space serves a higher, more sacred purpose. The two small attic rooms, though separate by walls, are joined by a singular, magical threshold. Their windows face each other across the narrow gutter where the roses grow, creating a physical and spiritual bridge between two young souls. This narrow gap is not a divide, but a shared terrace, a private world where Kay and Gerda can step out and sit among the flowers as if they were in a forest of their own making, floating high above the town. This bridge of light, wood, and leaves is where their spirits meet in perfect silence, a connection that transcends the need for walls, roofs, or spoken words. It is a revelation of how the smallest, most humble spaces can hold the largest loves, and how a simple wooden box of earth can become a vast kingdom when shared with a kindred heart. The bridge is a symbol of their unity, a testament to the fact that no matter how cold the winds may blow from the wild north, the path between them remains open, blooming, and bathed in the shared warmth of their companionship. You can see them sitting there, their shadows merging into one as the stars begin to claim the sky, protected by the very greenery they tended with such care. The atmosphere is further softened by the voice of the wind as it skims over the terracotta roof tiles. It does not howl or whistle. Instead, it hums a low melodic lullaby, a sound that seems to be filtered through the very chimney stacks and heavy wooden rafters. It is a distant, wordless song that carries the essence of the surrounding countryside, the whisper of the ancient pines, the sigh of the distant, salt-rimmed sea, and the rhythmic, slow pulse of the sleeping town below. This sound is a gentle vibration that you can feel in the soles of your feet and the palms of your hands, a soothing frequency that lulls the nervous system into a state of total, blissful surrender. It is the sound of the universe rocking the house to sleep, a celestial cradle song that ensures that every dream born within these walls will be one of absolute peace and divine protection. You are safe here, nestled in the very heart of the attic, protected by the roses, the seasoned wood, and the eternal song of the wind. The world is far away, and its troubles are but shadows on a wall that have no power here. In this deep state of security, your eyes drift toward the glass of the window, where the frost has begun to trace delicate, silvery patterns along the edges, like the lace of a phantom queen. The glass is thick and old, shimmering with a faint, iridescent quality that seems to catch and hold the stray light of the stars. It is a beautiful surface, yet it reminds us that all things, even the clearest of visions and the most certain of truths, can be transformed by the lens through which we view them. Behind the undeniable beauty of the garden and the nurturing warmth of the attic, there is a legendary tale of a glass that was not so kind, a mirror from a forgotten time that changed the way the world was perceived by those who looked within. As the roses sway ever so slightly in the cool night air, we begin to wonder about the nature of sight and the hidden forces that shape our reality. The attic remains our fortress of safety, but the story is beginning to ripple, like a single stone thrown into a perfectly still pond, moving us toward the shimmering, elusive mystery of the looking glass and the strange, quiet power it held over the hearts of men. We prepare to look through the glass, not with fear, but with the curiosity of a dreamer. Deep within the hidden, forgotten folds of ancient time, far beyond the reach of the attic's cozy warmth and the scent of roses, there once existed a workshop draped in perpetual velvet shadow. It was a place where the sun never dared to tread, nestled between the cold peaks of the world's end. It was here that a strange and ancient craftsman, a creature not of flesh and bone, but of cold malice and shimmering mirrors, labored over a creation that would change the very texture of human reality. This was the troll, a being whose laughter sounded like the cracking of dry ice under a winter moon, and his masterpiece was a looking-glass of singular dark enchantment. He did not forge it with the roar of fire or the beat of a hammer, but with the cold, distorted logic of a mind that could no longer find beauty in anything true. For centuries, it seemed, he polished the surface with the silver dust of fallen stars and the bitter, freezing breath of the north wind, until the glass itself began to hum with a low, dissonant energy that vibrated in the marrow of the bones. It was a mirror designed specifically to strip the soul of its inner light, a lens that captured the vibrant world, not as it was in its glory, but as it appeared to a heart that had forgotten how to feel the warmth of love. This was the origin of the Great Distortion, a vast vessel of shimmering lies that waited, hungry and cold, to be turned toward the unsuspecting world below. When the mirror was finally lifted toward the vast starlit heavens, the very air of the atmosphere seemed to shiver and recoil in silent protest. As you imagine looking into this vast shimmering glass, the vibrant, living colors of our world begin to drain away, replaced by a surreal, warped landscape that defies every law of nature and light. The most majestic mountains, once symbols of eternal strength and earthly majesty, now appear in their reflection like heaps of grey stagnant sludge melting into an unrecognizable mass. The vast, deep blue oceans teeming with life and ancient mystery look like dark, motionless pools of ink, devoid of all tide or current. Even the most beautiful and radiant of faces, when caught in this shimmering, shifting surface, become unrecognizable. A single kind, warm smile is twisted into a hideous frozen grimace, and the spark of goodness in a person's eyes is magnified into a cold, predatory glare that holds no reflection of the sun. It is as if the mirror is a living predatory thing, slowly eating the grace and the holiness from every object it touches. The world through this lens is a place of jagged, sharp edges and hollow, echoing spaces, a fever dream where the sun provides no warmth to the skin and the moon offers no guidance to the traveler. It is a mesmerizing, hypnotic vision, a high-concept landscape that dances just on the edge of the subconscious mind, pulling the imagination into a state of deep fascination with the impossible and the surreal. You find yourself drifting through this distorted reflection, floating over a world made of glass and shadow, where time has slowed to a heavy liquid crawl. The troll and his followers carried this heavy glass higher and higher into the thin air, laughing with a sound like shattering crystal as they watched the reflection of the earth shrivel and distort beneath them. They climbed toward the very stars themselves, intent on mocking the celestial divine light with their dark invention. But as they reached the thinnest, coldest layers of the upper atmosphere, where the air is as sharp as a diamond, the mirror began to vibrate with a violent, uncontrollable intensity. The glass could no longer contain the immense weight of its own malice and the pressure of its shimmering lies. With a sound that was less of a crash and more of a silent cosmic snap, a ripple in the fabric of space, the mirror erupted into a billion pieces. It did not fall in heavy shards of jagged glass that would strike the earth with violence. Instead, it dissolved into a vast, shimmering cloud of invisible dust, a mist of fragments so infinitesimal they could not be seen by the naked eye. This was the great reveal. The mirror as a single object was gone, but its essence had become a part of the very air we breathe. These tiny crystalline motes began to scatter to the four corners of the world, floating on the silent eternal currents of the high winds, waiting to settle where they might do the most invisible harm. Some were as large as a grain of fine sea sand, while others were as fine as the powdery bloom on a purple plum, but each and every one carried within it the full, distorted power of the original, dark-looking glass. Yet, as these fragments began their long, incredibly slow descent toward the green earth below, they seemed to lose their jagged, threatening nature in the vastness of the sky. In the deep, quiet spaces of your own mind, see them now not as sharp, cutting glass, but as something as light, as soft, and as harmless as down feathers falling from a bird in flight. They drift through the midnight sky like the softest silk ribbons, swirling in slow-motion ballots across the silver face of the moon. Each mote is a tiny, iridescent spark, glowing with a faint, ghostly light that is more beautiful and captivating than it is terrifying. They settle onto the world with the weight of a single silent snowflake, landing gently on the heavy sleeves of winter coats, the delicate petals of sleeping flowers, and the long eyelashes of children lost in their dreams. There is a strange, profound, and paradoxical peace in their movement, a soothing, repetitive drift that lulls the senses into a state of total, blissful calm. The danger is present, but it is wrapped in such a delicate, ethereal grace that the mind cannot help but surrender to the mesmerizing beauty of the fall. The world is being slowly covered in a layer of shimmering, invisible dust, a blanket of forgotten dreams that makes every sound feel muffled, every light feel soft, and every distance feel comfortably far away. You are watching a world being painted in silver, a world that is becoming as quiet as a held breath. The wind that carried these fragments finally begins to tire, its icy, frantic breath softening into a long, gentle sigh as it nears the familiar, snow-covered rooftops of our quiet town. The high-concept, shimmering landscape of the troll's dark workshop and the shattered remnants of the mirror begin to fade away, dissolving like a morning mist in the rising sun of the mind. We find ourselves returning, slowly, surely, and with a deep sense of relief, to the quiet winter evening at home. The attic sanctuary is still there, exactly as we left it, its heavy wooden beams glowing with a soft amber light in the dim reflection of the dying embers in the hearth. The grounding, earthy smell of the roses remains, a familiar scent that pulls us back from the heights of the astral storm and the coldness of the stars. Kay and Gerda are still sitting there by the window, their faces calm, utterly unaware of the cosmic debris that is settling on the thick glass outside. The room is warm, the wool blankets are heavy and comforting, and the safety of the hearth is absolute and unchanging. But as the very last of the mirror dust falls from the sky, a single tiny fragment, no larger than a speck of golden glitter, hovers just outside the window pane, caught in a stray gentle draught of the night air. It is a small thing, a mere whisper of a story yet to be told, but it is enough to remind us that even the most peaceful of nights can hold a hidden seed of change, waiting patiently for the moment when the world turns once again and the dream begins to shift. Within the deep amber embrace of the attic room, the passage of time seems to slow down significantly, turning into something thick, golden, and deliberate, like honey pouring from a jar in the winter. The frantic, cold energy of the distant celestial storm and the shattered fragments of the mirror have entirely dissolved, replaced by the rhythmic, grounding pulse of the domestic hearth. Grandmother sits in her high-backed carved wooden chair, her presence a monument of quiet strength and enduring warmth in the flickering light. The fire in the heavy iron stove crackles with a steady musical cadence, a series of soft pops, low sighs, and the rhythmic breathing of seasoned wood as it surrenders its inner heat to the orange flames. Her voice rises above the shifting shadows, not as a sharp command, but as a low, melodic vibration that seems to weave itself into the very fabric of the room's stillness. It is a voice seasoned by 1,000 winters and 1,000 stories, carrying the comforting weight of history that has been told and retold until every word is as smooth and familiar as a river stone. As she speaks, the world outside these attic walls feels incredibly far away, a distant, muffled memory of noise that cannot penetrate this thick cocoon of light, wool, and seasoned wood. She tells them of the great white bees that swarm in the silent heart of the winter storm, far above the frozen rivers. "Look out at the snowflakes, my children," she whispers, her eyes reflecting the glowing orange embers of the hearth like twin stars. "They are not merely ice and air. They are the white bees of the north, flying in vast, silent clouds across the darkened velvet sky. You can almost see them now, millions of tiny winged sparks of frost, dancing in a frantic yet coordinated ballet of frozen light. They do not have a hive of wood or straw, but a secret hive made of wind, starlight, and the purest moonlight. They never settle for long, always moving, always seeking the coldest, most forgotten corners of the earth to rest their weary crystalline wings. And like all great swarms, she tells them in a voice that drops to a soft hum, these white bees have a queen. She is the largest, the most radiant of them all, a being of exquisite, terrifying beauty, who flies where the swarm is thickest and the wind is coldest. She never touches the ground, for her feet of ice would melt instantly upon the warm, living earth. Instead, she travels on the shifting wings of the blizzard, peering into the frosted windows of the town with eyes that are as bright as winter stars, but as deep and cold as a frozen lake in the middle of the night. The story is a tapestry of cozy chill, a narrative that celebrates the majesty of the winter, while keeping the listener tucked safely within the glowing circle of the firelight. As grandmother's voice continues to hum its rhythmic, hypnotic tune, your gaze is drawn toward the window pane, where a silent, crystalline miracle is taking place in the dark. The moisture of the warm room, meeting the bitter freezing breath of the night outside, has begun to crystallize into intricate, breathtaking patterns of frost that spread like slow-motion lightning. This is the great reveal of the winter's hidden art. The glass is no longer a simple transparent barrier, but a vast canvas for a frozen silver forest. You can see delicate silver ferns unfurling across the surface, their fronds etched with a microscopic precision that no human hand could ever hope to mimic. There are towering pines, made of white ice, shimmering oaks, and sprawling thickets of crystalline briars, all growing in a silent, static garden that thrives on the cold. It is a world within a world, a landscape of absolute, breathless stillness that mirrors the wild, untamed territories of the far north, where the queen of the bees holds her silent court. These frost flowers do not smell of summer roses. They smell of ozone, of silence, and of the deep, dreamless sleep of the earth beneath the snow. The more you look, the more the forest seems to grow, its branches reaching out to cover the entire pane, shielding the attic from the gaze of the night and turning the room into a secret, silvered grotto of peace. The warmth of the stove radiates outward in slow, invisible waves, met by the heavy, profoundly comforting weight of the hand-woven wool blankets draped over your lap. These blankets are thick and coarse, yet they carry a history of absolute safety. The faint, lingering smell of cedar chests, of dried lavender from a forgotten summer, and of generations of peaceful, uninterrupted rest. Every fiber of the wool seems to hold a bit of the hearth's golden heat, creating a microclimate of total security that protects the body from the invisible reach of the frost outside. The contrast between the freezing silver forest on the glass and the glowing orange heart of the room creates a state of perfect, blissful equilibrium. Your nervous system begins to unwind completely, surrendering to the slow tidal pull of the grandmother's rhythmic storytelling. The heart rate slows down to match the steady, patient ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner, a constant tick-tock that marks the passage of a night where nothing is required of you but to breathe, to listen, and to let go. You are a passenger in a vessel of warmth, drifting safely across a vast sea of winter. But even in this state of profound, heavy tranquility, the story demands a witness. As the fire burns low, and the shadows stretch long, thin, and spindly across the floorboards, a subtle, almost imperceptible change occurs in the light outside the frosted pane. One of the silver ferns on the glass seems to tremble, caught in a sudden sharp draft that whistles through a crack. Through a tiny clear gap in the ice, a shadow begins to move in the darkness, a silhouette that is taller, more graceful, and more ethereal than any human form. It is a shape of shifting white and gray, flickering like the aurora borealis against the pitch-black sky. A pale, slender hand, or perhaps only a swirl of snow that looks like a hand, seems to brush gently against the exterior of the window, leaving a trail of sparkling iridescent dust in its wake. The grandmother's voice falters for just a second, a caught breath in the dark, as the presence outside lingers for a moment, watching the warmth of the roses from the coldness of the void. The transition is soft, a whisper of movement that signals the end of the domestic peace, and the beginning of the long, icy road that leads away from the attic and into the silent heart of the Snow Queen's domain. The room is still warm, but the north is watching. The fire in the heavy iron stove has burned down to a deep, pulsating crimson, and the attic room has surrendered to a heavy velvet-like silence that feels as thick as a winter quilt. Kay moves quietly toward the window, his soft breath creating a small, fleeting cloud of mist that momentarily obscures the silver forest of frost on the pane. To see the world outside, he takes a small heated copper coin, warmed for a long time by the very last of the hearth's glowing energy, and presses it firmly, steadily against the frozen glass. You can almost hear the soft musical hiss as the warm metal meets the ancient ice, melting a perfectly circular, crystal-clear hole through the thick frozen layers. This small, clear porthole becomes a magical bridge between two entirely different worlds, the golden, sleeping interior of the warm attic and the vast blue-black infinity of the silent winter night outside. As Kay peers through this tiny circular window of clarity, the town below seems to have vanished, swallowed whole by a blizzard that moves with the grace of 1,000 drifting ghosts. The wind does not howl here. It sings in a high, thin, and crystalline frequency that vibrates through the glass, inviting the eye to look further, deeper, into the very heart of the swirling white void, where the shadows of the earth are no longer bound by gravity or time. Through the copper-melted circle of clarity, the swirling snow begins to take on a deliberate, majestic, and terrifyingly beautiful shape. Out of the chaotic, frantic swarm of the white bees, a silhouette emerges with the slow, majestic elegance of a shifting glacier moving under a midnight sun. It is the Snow Queen herself, standing amidst the roaring storm, as if the violent wind were her own silken, flowing train. She is tall, slender, and blindingly white, her entire form appearing as if it were carved from the purest, most translucent block of ice ever birthed by the deepest caverns of the north. Her gown is not made of any earthly fabric, but of 1,000,000,000 shimmering stars, each one a tiny frozen sun that glitters with a cold blue fire that never warms. As she moves with a slow liquid grace, the air around her seems to crystallize instantly, creating a long wake of diamond dust that sparkles and swirls in the pale moonlight. She is a monument to the ethereal cold, a being of such profound and alien beauty that the human mind struggles to hold her image for long. She looks as though she were composed entirely of compressed moonlight and the fleeting breath of the aurora borealis, a regal silhouette that stands motionless against the howling dark, watching the little attic window with a patient, predatory, and silent grace. As Kay watches, utterly mesmerized by the shimmering, shifting light of her star-covered gown, the Snow Queen turns her gaze directly toward the small, clear hole in the glass. This is the moment of the great reveal, where the awe of her celestial beauty meets the chilling, hollow reality of her nature. Her eyes are not like the warm, shifting, and emotional eyes of a human. They are two piercing, brilliant, and unblinking diamonds set in a face of flawless, cold marble. They are incredibly bright, reflecting the entire galaxy and the spinning stars within their crystalline depths, yet they hold absolutely no peace, no rest, and no comfort. There is no spark of the hearth in those eyes, no memory of a summer sun, and no trace of human kindness. They are eyes that have looked upon the very beginning of the world and the frozen end of time without ever once blinking, filled with a cold, intellectual hunger that seeks only to preserve the entire world in a state of static, silent, and frozen perfection. Looking into them is like looking deep into a lightless crevasse in the ancient ice. There is a sense of infinite distance, of a loneliness so vast and so old that it has become a kind of majestic power. She is the embodiment of the winter that never ends, a beauty that is perfect only because it is entirely heartless, watching the warmth of the living, breathing world with a quiet, unyielding, and frozen curiosity. But even as this cold, magnificent vision lingers just inches away on the other side of the glass, the profound and ancient safety of the attic rises up like an invisible, golden shield. You realize, with a deep and settling breath that expands your chest, that she cannot enter this sanctuary. The threshold of the warm seasoned room is a boundary that her icy nature cannot cross. The heavy protective scent of the roses, the lingering, deep-seated heat in the bricks of the stove, and the invisible aura of the grandmother's ancient stories create a barrier as strong as any fortress wall ever built. She is a creature of the void, a daughter of the vacuum, and the life fire of this loving home is a sun that she cannot endure. She nods slowly, a rhythmic gesture of cold acknowledgement, and her image begins to dissolve back into the swirling white bees of the relentless storm. The fear melts away like frost in the sun, replaced by the soothing, heavy knowledge that you are tucked away in a sanctuary of wood, wool, and love, where the frost is merely a temporary decoration, not a threat to your soul. The Queen of the Ice is but a magnificent painting outside your window, a story that exists only in the cold distance, while you remain anchored in the golden, unchanging, and warm center of your own absolute peace. The vision slowly fades into the dark, and the copper-melted whole begins to freeze over once more. The silver ferns of frost reclaiming their crystalline territory with a slow creeping and delicate grace. The Snow Queen is gone, carried away on the invisible wings of a north wind that is already seeking the high, lonely mountain passes of the Arctic. In the profound silence that follows, the attic seems to settle even deeper into the protective earth. The long heavy night of winter begins to give way, not with a sudden burst of light, but with a heavy, slow and weary sigh that echoes through the ancient timbers of the house. The seasons are turning in their grand celestial cycle, moving with the patient, rhythmic inevitability of a great cosmic wheel. The deep white sleep of January begins to melt into the grey soft mists of February, and the world prepares for the long slow transition toward the returning light. We remain here in the attic, safe, still, and warm. But the air is different now. It holds the weight of the vision we have seen, a lingering chill of awe that prepares us for the long journey that lies ahead, as the snow begins to slowly pull back its white hem to reveal the first hidden and green secrets of the waking earth. The heavy white cloak of winter slowly and reluctantly recedes, pulling back from the eaves of the attic to reveal the persistent green secrets of the earth waiting beneath the snow. Summer returns to the old town with a heavy golden light that seems to pour like warm, scented oil over the ancient cobblestones and the sun-bleached tiles of the high gabled roofs. The air is no longer sharp with the biting scent of ozone and frost. Instead, it is thick, sweet and languid with the honeyed perfume of the heirloom roses which have exploded into a magnificent riot of crimson and soft pink. The bees hum a low, constant and vibrating bass note that echoes through the wooden boxes of the attic garden, a sound that signals a time of absolute abundance, growth, and deep peace. Kay and Gerda sit once more in their elevated sanctuary, the generous sun warming their shoulders as they slowly turn the pages of their favorite picture book filled with knights, golden castles, and distant empires. The world around them is radiant, shimmering with a clarity that only a perfect, endless summer afternoon can provide. It is a moment of profound, golden serenity, where the soul feels entirely at home in the light, and the cold shadows of the Snow Queen's distant palace seem like nothing more than a half-forgotten, fading dream of a long-past night. But even in this peak of golden warmth and floral abundance, a tiny invisible remnant of the dark winter still lingers in the hidden corners of the world. As the heavy clock in the great church tower strikes the hour with a slow, resonant, and vibrating boom that shakes the very air, a sudden, sharp draught of cold wind swirls unexpectedly through the attic garden. In that fleeting microscopic second, a tiny mote of the troll's shattered mirror, a fragment no larger than a single speck of sunlight, is carried on the breeze and strikes Kay directly in the eye. He winces, a small sharp cry of surprise escaping his lips as the invisible sliver slides deeper, traveling through the optic nerve until it reaches the very center of his warm heart. It does not hurt with a burning heat or a sharp sting. Instead, it brings a sudden, terrifyingly silent coldness that spreads through his chest like a single drop of dark ink in a glass of perfectly clear water. The warmth of the sun on his skin remains exactly as it was, but he can no longer truly feel its blessing. The heavy scent of the roses is still there, but it no longer brings him a sense of joy. The splinter has lodged itself firmly, turning his once vibrant heart into a small, unyielding, and frozen lump of ice, and the entire world begins to shift its colors and meanings before his very eyes. As Kay looks up from the picture book, the great reveal of the mirror's dark power takes a complete hold of his vision. The beautiful, blooming heirloom roses, which only a moment ago were the pride of their shared garden, now look to him like tattered, insect-eaten, and worthless weeds. The golden sunlight strikes the polished floorboards, not as a divine blessing, but as a harsh, irritating, and clinical glare that exposes every tiny crack and every microscopic layer of dust. He looks at Gerda, his dearest and most loyal friend, and instead of seeing the familiar light of love in her eyes, he sees only a tear-streaked face that looks trivial, mundane, and foolish. Everything that is good, everything that is kind, and everything that is beautiful now appears to him as a distorted, hollow mockery of itself. He laughs, but the sound is jagged, brittle, and cold, like the snapping of dry twigs under a heavy boot. To his newly frozen heart, only the cold, sharp, and perfect geometry of a snowflake or the mathematical, unfeeling precision of a machine holds any real value. The world hasn't changed its essence, but his perception of it has been poisoned by a sliver of glass that demands he see only the flaws, only the ugliness, and only the hollow, empty spaces in the souls of those who love him most. Yet, even as Kay's words become sharp and his actions become distant and strange, the persistent, gentle and quiet love of Gerda remains as a steady, unwavering light in the gathering gloom of his spirit. She does not recoil from his newfound coldness. She does not meet his harshness with anger or resentment. Instead, she offers him a deep, melancholy serenity. When he tears the beautiful roses from their stems in a fit of cold logic, she quietly and tenderly gathers the fallen petals from the ground. When he mocks the stories of wonder they once loved together, she keeps the books safe and dry, knowing in her heart that the boy she loves is still there, hidden beneath a heavy layer of frost that he did not choose and cannot see. Her love is a soothing, low-frequency hum that vibrates constantly beneath the surface of his icy exterior, a steady reminder of the warmth that once was and the warmth that must surely return. She becomes the silent keeper of the garden's soul, a sanctuary of human kindness that refuses to be extinguished by the sudden, unnatural winter in Kay's heart. Her presence is a soft, warm, and invisible blanket that continues to wrap around his spirit, even when he tries his best to throw it off. The golden liquid light of the long summer days finally begins to pale, turning into a thin, silvery gray as the year moves with heavy footsteps toward its inevitable decline. The thick, perfumed air of the rose garden is gradually replaced by a crisp, restless, and lonely wind that carries the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. The great autumn winds are beginning to stir in the distant valleys, sweeping across the open plains and rattling the window panes of the attic with a persistent hollow sound that echoes through the rooms. The roses bow their heavy heads, their vibrant crimson turning to a bruised, fading purple, as they prepare to return their essence to the cold soil. Kay stands motionless at the window for hours, his gaze fixed on the darkening northern horizon, feeling a strange, magnetic, and icy pull toward the distance that he cannot explain. The domestic safety and the familiar warmth of the attic are beginning to feel like a cage to a heart made of ice and glass. The bridge between the two souls is stretching, growing thin, fragile, and translucent as the world prepares for a long season of inevitable separation. The wind is calling his name in a voice made of frost, and the first hints of a winter that will never melt are beginning to gather in the deepening shadows, marking the end of their golden age and the beginning of the long, lonely journey into the absolute cold of the unknown. The long, iron-gray winter has returned to the ancient town, but it is no longer the cozy, hearth-warmed winter of the shared past. It is a season of relentless, unyielding skies and restless, biting winds that seem to sweep every trace of vibrant color from the living world. In the very heart of the bustling town square, the air is thick with the heavy, swirling mist of a mid-December afternoon, where the sun is but a pale, forgotten memory behind the clouds. Hundreds of children, wrapped in thick layers of coarse wool and heavy fur, dart across the hard-packed, glistening snow, their youthful laughter echoing like distant bells against the tall stone walls of the ancient gabled buildings. Among them, moving with a singular and strange focus, is Kay. His movements are now sharp, efficient, and hauntingly precise, his eyes entirely devoid of their former amber warmth. He carries his small wooden sledge, a simple, humble thing made of weathered pine and iron runners, but in his frozen mind, he is no longer playing a child's game. He moves through the joyful, chaotic crowd like a silent shadow, indifferent to the warmth and life radiating around him, his gaze constantly searching the gray horizon for something more substantial, something that finally matches the cold, mathematical, and unfeeling perfection that now governs every beat of his heart. The square is a vast sea of movement, a rhythmic human pulse of life under a leaden sky, yet Kay stands within it as if he were already miles away, anchored to the earth only by the heavy, silent weight of the impending great storm. Annie! Suddenly, through the grand arched stone gateway of the city, a magnificent and towering white carriage appears, moving with a silent, ethereal, and liquid grace that seems to defy the very laws of friction and the resistance of the deep snow. It is a vehicle of pure, blinding brilliance, its long runners carved from the polished ivory bone of ancient creatures, and its frame draped in heavy pristine white furs that shimmer and ripple like a field of fallen stars under a winter moon. The driver, wrapped in a vast white cloak that flows behind the carriage like a long silver trail of mountain mist, does not look to the left or the right. As the carriage glides effortlessly through the square, Kay feels a powerful, magnetic, and ancient pull, an irresistible command that speaks directly to the sliver of poison ice lodged deep in his chest. Without a single word, without a moment's hesitation or a look back at the world he knows, he runs forward with a steady rhythmic pace and ties his small humble sledge to the back of the magnificent white vessel. It is a movement of total and absolute surrender, a rhythmic repetition of his shifting fate. He sits down on the hard wood, gripping the frozen ropes with numbed, unfeeling fingers, and feels the first powerful surge of silent momentum as the carriage begins to accelerate, pulling him steadily away from the familiar stones, the glowing windows, and the distant, fading voices of his childhood. The pace begins to quicken with a mesmerizing intensity, the rhythmic shush-shush of the heavy runners against the packed ice becoming a steady, hypnotic, and low-frequency drone that vibrates through Kay's entire body, from the soles of his feet to the crown of his head. They move faster and faster, weaving through the narrow, echoing streets, until they reach the great dark outer gates of the fortified city. This is the moment of the great reveal. As they pass through that final stone threshold, the world of houses, gardens, and warm hearths vanishes instantly, replaced by a blinding, swirling whiting storm that has no beginning, no end, and no horizon. The carriage does not slow its speed. Progress. Instead, it begins to lift. The small wooden sledge is pulled from the ground, tethered to the magnificent white carriage by nothing but a thin, fraying rope, and the Snow Queen's cold, unyielding will. They are now rushing through the very heart of the blizzard, where the snowflakes are no longer tiny, harmless bees, but have grown into vast glowing and majestic white hens that flutter and dance in the freezing thin air. Kay tries to cry out, to say his evening prayers for protection, but his mind can only remember the cold multiplication tables, the hard, undeniable facts of a world made of numbers without spirit. He is being pulled into the absolute silent center of the great north, a realm where the laws of the heavy earth are suspended in a whirlwind of blinding ice and celestial light. In this high-velocity, silent journey, a strange, profound, and weightless sense of calm begins to settle over Kay's senses like a heavy blanket. The primal fear that initially gripped his throat and tightened his chest starts to dissolve, replaced by a soothing, transcendental, and liquid tranquility. He no longer feels the biting, cruel sting of the wind on his face, or the heavy, exhausting pressure of his own physical body against the wood of the sledge. Instead, he feels as though he is being made of the same light, drifting, and effortless substance as the clouds themselves. He is floating away, disconnected from the heavy gravity of his own past, moving in a state of total, effortless, and blissful suspension. The motion of the carriage is so incredibly smooth, so perfectly rhythmic and repetitive, that it feels like a cosmic cradle being rocked by a vast invisible hand. The cold air around him becomes a supportive medium, a vast silver-blue ocean of silence that carries him deeper and deeper into the heart of the dream. There is no friction here, no resistance, no weight, only the eternal, flowing, and effortless movement toward the stillness of the pole. He closes his eyes for a long, deep moment, and in that comforting darkness, he feels the very last of his earthly burdens simply fall away and vanish, leaving him as light, as hollow, and as peaceful as a flute carved from ancient prehistoric ice. As he looks back one last time through the swirling mists of the storm, the town he once called home has shrunk into a tiny, flickering and lonely spark on the very edge of the dark world. It looks like a single, dying ember in a vast, infinite field of grey ash. The tall church tower, the small attic garden where the roses once bloomed, the memory of Gerda's warm handle of it, is becoming a distant, unrecognizable, and fading point of light that finally silently vanishes altogether into the void. The bridge to his former life has been retracted, and the town is now a part of a completely different reality, a place of warmth, shadow, an emotion that he can no longer reach or even fully remember. He is alone in the great shimmering and silver void, bound to the Snow Queen's carriage as it climbs higher and higher toward the emerald curtains of the aurora borealis. The profound silence of the high atmosphere begins to roar in his ears, a majestic, wordless, and eternal sound that speaks only of the long, slow, and sacred sleep of the glaciers. He is no longer Kay the boy. He is a silent traveler in the kingdom of the infinite, drifting further and further into the white darkness where the stars are the only lanterns and the ice is the only floor he will ever need to know. The winter's heavy frozen grip finally begins to loosen its hold on the world, and as the great majestic white silence of the Snow Queen's departure fades into a distant memory, the world of the living starts to stir with a faint, watery, and rhythmic heartbeat. Back in the ancient town, where the long shadows of the gabled roofs are now softened by a thin, grey, and peaceful mist, Gerda stands alone at the very edge of the great, awakening river. The heavy snow has melted into 1,000 silver trickles, and the river itself has fully awakened from its long sleep, its dark, cold waters rushing with a newfound, steady purpose toward the distant, unseen sea. The air is cool, damp, and profoundly refreshing, carrying the deep scent of wet earth and the clean mineral tang of the dissolving ice. Gerda's heart is a heavy, quiet weight in her chest, filled with a persistent, patient longing for the boy who vanished so long ago into the white storm. She looks down at the flowing water, which moves with a relentless, rhythmic energy, and she realizes with a sudden calm clarity that if she is to find Kay, she must finally entrust her entire being to the same deep currents that carry the world forward into the future. Her search begins not with a frantic race or a loud cry, but with a slow, solemn and meditative walk along the muddy bank, her small rhythmic footsteps leaving a temporary fading trail in the soft ground as she seeks a way to bridge the vast gap between her quiet attic and the unknown, flowing world beyond. She wears her most precious and cherished possession, a pair of brand new crimson-red shoes that glow like warm embers against the dull, neutral grey of the riverbank stones. They are a vivid symbol of her childhood, of the blooming roses in the attic, and of the inner warmth she refuses to let go of, even in the face of the cold. Standing at the very edge of the dark water, where the current swirls in slow, mesmerizing and hypnotic patterns, she makes a silent, sacred, and eternal vow to the earth and the stream. She looks deep into the flowing river, and speaks to the spirit of the water in a voice as soft as steady, and as continuous as a prayer. "I will give you my new red shoes," she whispers to the ripples, "if you will only bring my dear playfellow back to me." With a movement of profound and serene resignation, she slowly takes off the small shoes and tosses them with a gentle arc into the moving water. For a long moment, they bob on the dark surface like two bright, floating petals, a sudden splash of vibrant, defiant color against the obsidian depth of the cold stream. But the river does not take them at first. The gentle waves push them back toward the muddy shore, again and again, as if the water itself is reluctant to take so much from a child. It is a slow, rhythmic, and repetitive exchange, the water reaching out and then retreating, a liquid dialogue between the girl and the ancient, unfeeling, yet strangely kind spirit of the moving river. Eventually, as she moves further along the bank, Gerda finds a small, weathered, and ancient wooden boat caught among the tall, swaying reeds, its hull silvered and smoothed by years of sun, wind, and river spray. She steps carefully inside, intending only to throw her shoes further into the heart of the current, but as she reaches out, the boat begins to shift beneath her weight with a slow, rocking motion. This is the moment of the great reveal. The boat is not moored to the earth by any rope or chain. It is merely resting in the mud, waiting for a passenger to carry into the unknown. As Gerda's weight settles into the seasoned wood, the boat glides away from the bank, pulled by an invisible, powerful, and liquid hand. There is no jolt, no sudden movement, and no sound, only a smooth, irreversible, and dreamlike transition from the solid, static ground to the shifting, graceful flow of the water. The shore begins to recede slowly, the familiar trees and the distant, fading towers of the town shrinking into a hazy, watercolor memory of the past. Gerda is no longer a dweller of the land. She has become a silent part of the river's eternal journey, guided by a current that knows no obstacles and fears no distance. The boat moves with a quiet, majestic, and heavy inevitability, drifting further and further into the green heart of the countryside, where the world is made of nothing but reflection, shadow, and flow. As the wooden boat moves further downstream, a profound, heavy, and soothing sensory experience begins to take a total hold of the journey. The only sound left in the entire world is the rhythmic, constant lapping of the small waves against the side of the wooden boat, a soft, repetitive, and mesmerizing cluck-cluck that sounds like the very heartbeat of the water itself. It is a liquid lullaby, a sound of such purity that it vibrates through the planks of the boat and directly into Gerda's very bones, calming her fears and slowing her breath into a deep, steady cycle. The water is a deep, translucent, and inviting green, and as the afternoon sun begins to peek through the soft gray clouds, it creates a dancing, shimmering network of golden light on the surface that is hypnotic and dizzying to behold. The movement is so steady, so effortless, and so perfectly balanced that it feels as if the boat is standing perfectly still while the world itself, the trees, the birds, the hills, is being pulled past it like a beautiful, slowly unfolding silk scroll. Every ripple, every tiny eddy, and every silent swirl of the current is a part of a larger, more peaceful, and divine design. The tension of the search dissolves into a state of absolute, serene surrender. There is nowhere to go but where the river leads, and no task for the mind but to listen to the ancient song of the wood and the water. The river carries the boat through a landscape that seems to defy the calendar of the seasons and the logic of the clock. As the sun climbs higher into the soft sky, the air grows miraculously warm, still, and heavy, filled with a drowsy golden haze that smells of sun-warmed grass. The banks of the river are no longer muddy and grey. They are suddenly overflowing with a lush, impossible, and vivid greenery that seems to glow from within. You can see ancient trees heavy with ripe, sun-warmed fruit, and endless meadows carpeted in wildflowers that haven't been seen by human eyes since the very beginning of time. This is the final bridge to a different reality. The boat is nearing a shore of eternal unchanging spring, where a small enchanted cottage with curious red and blue windows stands amidst a forest of giant nodding lilies that sway in the gentle breeze. The scent of the water changes once more, losing its cold, mineral edge and becoming sweet, thick, and intoxicating with the fragrance of cherry blossoms, damp moss, and wild honey. The boat slows its pace, the current gentling into a whisper as it nears a small moss-covered wooden pier. The journey of the river is coming to a long, peaceful pause, finally delivering Gerda to a place of deep enchantment where time is measured only by the slow opening of a flower bud and the lazy flight of a golden butterfly, a sanctuary where the memory of the winter is held at bay by a magic as old as the earth itself and as deep as the river's own heart. The small weathered boat comes to a soft whispering halt against a bank of moss, so thick, so ancient, and so emerald green that it feels like a vast velvet cushion pressing against the silvered wood of the hull. As Gerda steps out, her feet sink deeply into the plush, damp, and fragrant earth, and she finds herself standing before a cottage that seems to have grown directly from the very roots of the world itself. It is a small, curious house with a heavy roof of golden thatch and windows made of brilliant red and blue glass that shimmer like scattered rubies and sapphires in the eternal afternoon light. These windows do not merely reflect the sky. Instead, they seem to glow with a deep inner radiance, casting long, colorful shadows of violet and crimson across the stone path shadows that shift and dance slowly, as if they were breathing with a life of their own. The air in this place is different from any air in the world outside it, is heavy, warm, and perfectly still, entirely devoid of the restless, biting wind that carries the scent of the north. It is a secret pocket of time where the heavy clock of the world has ceased its ticking, and the only remaining measurement of the hours is the slow, rhythmic unfurling of a new leaf or the lazy, golden drift of a single sun mowed through the honeyed, heavy air. Out of the curious cottage steps an old woman, leaning gracefully on a crutch, painted with beautiful blue and yellow flowers that seem to bloom in the light. She wears a large, wide-brimmed sun hat, also painted with colorful blossoms, and her smile is as wide as warm, and as welcoming as the summer solstice itself. She takes Gerda by the hand, her skin feeling as soft as dry, and as delicate as a pressed flower from a long-forgotten century, and leads her into the cool, dim and peaceful interior of the house. There, Gerda is seated in a deep chair that feels as though it were constructed entirely of soft white summer clouds, and the old woman begins a sacred ritual of deep, rhythmic care. She takes a heavy golden comb from her embroidered apron and begins to comb Gerda's long, sun-streaked hair. With every long, slow, and deliberate stroke of the cold gold against the strands, a profound and overwhelming sense of peace begins to wash over the girl in waves. The movement is perfectly repetitive, soothingly hypnotic, a steady, rhythmic hush-hush of the comb that seems to untangle not just her golden hair, but her very memories of the cold world. With each pass of the golden teeth, the image of the frozen attic, the red shoes, and even the face of the boy Kay begins to grow pale, translucent, and distant, like a charcoal drawing being slowly and gently erased by a kind hand. It is a sweet, heavy forgetfulness, a total shedding of the heavy burdens of the heart in favor of the immediate, golden and floral present. As Gerda drifts deeper into this state of hazy floral tranquility, a silent and magical transformation occurs in the sun-drenched garden outside. The old woman, wishing with all her heart to keep the child forever in this sanctuary of eternal spring, knows that certain things, certain reminders of the winter, must be hidden away. She walks slowly among the overflowing flower beds, and as she passes the magnificent rose bushes, she gently taps the dark earth with her flowered crutch. This is the moment of the great reveal. The thick, blooming roses, the very symbols of Kay and their shared attic home, begin to sink slowly and gracefully into the dark, fragrant, and welcoming soil. They do not wither or die, they simply descend into the earth, their velvet petals folding inward like a closing eye as the ground opens up to receive them in silence. One by one, the crimson, pink, and white blossoms vanish beneath the green surface, leaving the ground perfectly smooth and untouched, as if no rose had ever dared to grow in this enchanted place. The memory of the winter, the memory of the long search, and the heavy memory of loss are buried deep beneath the ancient roots of the garden, hidden away in the dark where the warm sunlight cannot reach them. The garden is now a place of perfect, curated and safe beauty, where nothing remains to remind the soul of the cold world beyond the emerald hedge. The afternoon deepens and stretches into a state of permanent golden slumber, and the air becomes saturated with the heavy, intoxicating and sweet scent of ripe cherries and warm, liquid sunlight. Everywhere you look, there are trees laden with fruit so dark, so plump, and so perfect they look like polished garnets hanging from the heavy green branches. Gerda eats of the cherries, their cool sweetness filling her mouth and further anchoring her spirit to this enchanted, timeless shore. The sunlight here does not burn the skin. It is a thick, liquid warmth that wraps around the limbs like a heavy, weighted silk robe, slowing the blood, steadying the heart, and quieting the restless mind. You can feel the actual weight of the sun on your eyelids, a gentle, persistent pressure that invites you to close them and simply breathe in the complex perfume of 1,000 different flowers. There are lilies as large as cathedral bells, blue violets that carpet the shaded corners in a soft velvet, and golden sunflowers that nod their heavy, seed-filled heads in a constant, rhythmic greeting to the horizon. It is a sensory overload of the softest, most delicate kind, a world of texture and fragrance where every single detail is designed to comfort, to soothe, and to ensure that the restless heart finally finds its eternal rest in the sun. As the light begins to turn to a deep honey-colored amber of the late evening, the absolute silence of the garden is broken by a new, ethereal and shimmering sound. It is the whispers of the flowers themselves, speaking in the language of the dew. If you listen closely, with a mind that has entirely forgotten its own name and its own troubles, you can hear the soft rustling voices of the blossoms as they lean toward one another in the gentle, cooling evening draught. Each individual flower has its own tiny story to tell, a fragmented poetic narrative of sunlight, of the taste of the morning rain, and the deep dark dreams of the earth. The bluebells chime with a silver crystalline tone that vibrates in the air, while the heavy fragrant peonies sigh with a voice like velvet rubbing against velvet. They do not speak of the painful past or the uncertain future. They speak only of the profound beauty of the present moment, of the comfortable weight of the bees, and the cooling grace of the coming night. These whispers create a complex, moving tapestry of sound that surrounds the cottage like a protective veil, a bridge of voices that leads Gerda and you deeper into the very heart of the enchantment. The world is reduced to this garden, this warm house, and this eternal floral conversation, as the very last traces of the world beyond the blue and red windows fade into a beautiful shimmering and perfect nothingness. The garden has become a labyrinth of light and color, a place where the air itself feels like a warm, liquid embrace. Gerda moves through the tall stalks and heavy blossoms with a slow, drifting pace, her bare feet barely touching the grass. The sweet forgetfulness of the old woman's golden comb still lingers in her mind. But a small, persistent spark of her true self begins to flicker, like a distant star through a thickening fog. She stops before each flower, her voice a soft, melodic whisper that blends with the hum of the bees. She asks the same question to every petal and every leaf, a rhythmic inquiry that echoes through the stillness. Have you seen him? Have you seen the boy with the cold heart and the bright eyes? But the flowers do not answer with the logic of the world. They do not speak of boys or sledges or frozen queens. Instead, they offer their own inner visions, pulling Gerda and you into a dream within a dream, a deeper layer of subconscious immersion where the only reality is the story the earth tells itself. First, she stands before the tall, majestic tiger lily, whose petals are the color of a setting sun and speckled with dark, mysterious spots. As Gerda leans in, the tiger lily begins its fire dance, not a movement of heat, but a slow, swaying rhythm of light. It tells a story of a funeral pyre in a distant, ancient land, where the air is thick with the scent of sandalwood and the sound of silver bells. The lily dreams of a young woman in a red silk sari, dancing around the flames as the sparks fly upward to become new stars. There is no mention of Kay, only the repetitive hypnotic movement of the dance and the orange glow of the embers. The story's a loop of fire and silk, a visual meditation that fills the mind with the warmth of 1,000 summers, making the cold norther feel like an impossible myth. The tiger lily's dream is a closed circle, a vibrant, burning born vision that exists only for itself, indifferent to the search or the passage of time. Next, Gerda drifts toward the delicate, nodding hyacinths, their blossoms hanging like clusters of tiny translucent bells in shades of deep violet and pale lavender. As the wind brushes against them, they begin to ring not with a sound the ear can hear, but with a silver crystalline vibration that the soul feels. They tell a story of 3 sisters who lived in a house of glass, drifting through a forest of giant ferns. Their voices are a soft choral repetition, a layering of ding-dong and hush-hush that creates a thick sonic tapestry. The hyacinths dream of the fragrance of the night, of the dew that settles on the wings of moths, and of the long, slow shadows that stretch across the forest floor. Like the tiger lily, they have no news of the boy. They are too busy listening to the music of their own stems, lost in a rhythmic floral trance that ignores the world of man and the sorrows of the heart. This is the great reveal of the garden's enchantment. Every flower is an island unto itself, a vessel for a unique, self-contained dream. The blue violets dream of the mossy earth. The golden sunflowers dream of the sun's great eye. The white lilies dream of the purity of the moon. They do not share the same world. They only share the same sunlight. Gerda realizes that she is surrounded by 1,000 different stories, all playing at once in a beautiful, chaotic harmony, yet none of them hold the truth she seeks. The flowers are not hiding the boy. They simply do not care for anything that does not bloom. They are the guardians of the subconscious, the keepers of 1,000 beautiful, trivial secrets that have no beginning and no end. The realization brings a sense of profound, lonely beauty, a recognition that the world is much larger and more indifferent than she ever imagined, a vast garden of dreams, where every soul is busy spinning its own silk. To soothe the growing weight of this realization, the mind returns to the simple, repetitive beauty of the garden's names and colors. You find yourself whispering them like a mantra, a rhythmic litany of peace: tiger lily, hyacinth, violet, rose, sunflower, lily. The colors swirl together in a soft kaleidoscopic blur: crimson, indigo, gold, snow white, and emerald. Each name is a soft breath, each color a warm touch on the skin. The repetition creates a state of total, blissful surrender, a safety in the sheer abundance of the earth's imagination. The garden is a soft, fragrant weight that holds you down, preventing the mind from wandering back to the cold and the dark. It is a sanctuary of sensory overload, where every detail is a gift, every scent a blessing, and every shadow a place of rest. You are floating in a sea of petals, anchored by the rhythmic humming of the bees and the steady, patient growth of the roots beneath you. But the spell of the flowers is not eternal. As Gerda reaches the edge of the garden, she sees a single, stray petal of a rose that the old woman's crutch failed to hide. It is a tiny, bruised thing, but it carries the scent of the attic, the scent of home, and the memory of a love that cannot be forgotten. The bridge of the flowery trance begins to crack. The whispers of the tiger lily and the ringing of the hyacinths fade into the background as a sudden cool breeze from the north sweeps over the hedge. Gerda's eyes snap open with a newfound clarity, the golden haze of the cherries and the sun finally lifting from her mind. She remembers the cold, she remembers the search, and she remembers the boy. The garden is still beautiful, still warm and still safe, but it is no longer enough. The awakening is soft, a quiet transition from the dream of the flowers back to the reality of the road, as Gerda prepares to step out from the eternal spring and back into the shifting, breathing world of the long, cold journey. The vibrant, intoxicating colors of the enchanted garden slowly fade into a palette of silver, charcoal, and pale moonlight. Gerda finds herself standing at the edge of a vast, ancient woods where the trees are tall, dark sentinels guarding the secrets of the night. Here, amidst the long shadows of the oaks, she meets a wise and ancient crow. This creature is not a bird of noise or flight, but a silent observer of the world's many paths. His feathers are the color of a starless sky, shimmering with a faint, iridescent sheen, like oil on water. He does not speak with a voice, but guides her with a rhythmic, slow tilt of his head, leading her toward the distant, towering silhouette of a royal palace. The ground beneath her feet is covered in a thick carpet of moss and fallen leaves, creating a soft, yielding surface that absorbs every movement. There is a profound stillness here, a heavy, velvety quiet that wraps around the senses like a cocoon. You are moving now into a landscape of fading reality, where the boundaries between the waking world and the world of dreams begin to blur and dissolve into the silver mist. As they reach the palace, the crow leads Gerda through a hidden side door and into a series of vast, echoing halls that seem to stretch into infinity. The floors are made of polished black marble, reflecting the pale moonlight that filters through the high, arched windows. In these halls, a strange and beautiful phenomenon occurs. The dreams of the palace inhabitants flit by like translucent, glowing veils. They are not solid things, but ribbons of light that drift through the air, carrying the faint images of forgotten summers and distant lands. You can see them spiraling near the ceiling, moving in a slow, hypnotic dance that ignores the constraints of time. Gerda moves through these flickering visions with a sense of weightless wonder, her own presence becoming as thin and ethereal as a shadow. The palace is a vessel of memories, a place where every corner holds a fragment of a story that is already half a rest. The air is cool and still, carrying only the faint, dry scent of ancient stone and the lingering sweetness of the incense burned in the high chambers. Further into the heart of the palace, the light from the windows creates long, dramatic patterns on the walls. This is the moment of the great reveal. As the moon shifts, the shadows of grand horses and tall hunters begin to appear, moving across the stone surfaces in a silent, eternal chase. These are the dreams of the hunt, fragments of the subconscious that take on a life of their own in the darkness. You can see the rhythmic rise and fall of the horse's powerful shoulders, the elegant curve of the bows, and the flowing manes of the hounds, all rendered in shades of grey and silver. They do not collide or crash, they glide through the walls as if the stone were made of smoke. It is a visual masterpiece of the subconscious, a repetitive and mesmerizing movement that pulls the mind deeper into a state of total, drifting immersion. The shadows are a bridge between the physical world and the realm of pure imagination, a reminder that even in the stillness of the night, the world is alive with the silent energy of the dream. To soothe the spirit, after the vastness of the halls, Gerda finds herself standing before a set of massive heavy curtains that divide the chambers. These curtains are made of the thickest, most luxurious velvet, a deep and royal crimson that looks almost black in the moonlight. As she reaches out, her hand disappears into the soft, deep pile of the fabric. The sensation is one of absolute overwhelming softness, a tactile experience that signals the ultimate safety of the interior. The velvet is heavy, cold to the touch, but warming as the hand lingers, a material that muffles the world and creates a sanctuary within a sanctuary. You can imagine the weight of these curtains as they hang from the high ceilings, creating a barrier against the vastness of the palace and the coldness of the night outside. The texture is a rhythmic comfort, a repetitive softness that lulls the body into a state of complete relaxation. You are tucked away in the folds of the velvet, protected by the density of the fabric and the silence of the stone. But as the night reaches its deepest point, the bridge to the next stage of the journey begins to form. A single stray draft sharp and thin slips through a gap in the velvet, pointing like a cold finger toward the north. The regal comfort of the palace, the shimmering dreams of the halls, and the rhythmic chase of the shadows begin to recede. The wind carries a new quality, now not the scent of flowers or incense, but the raw, honest chill of the deep ice. Gerda realizes that the warmth of the palace is a temporary pause, a station on a much longer road. The north is calling, its voice a silent vibration that resonates in the very center of her being. The transition is soft, a fading of the silver light into a deep indigo darkness, as the journey prepares to move beyond the stone walls and back into the vast open wilderness of the winter. The palace is left behind, a magnificent dream that dissolves into the mist, while the road ahead opens up, a long white path leading toward the heart of the Snow Queen's domain. The journey through the frozen wilderness finally leads to the very edge of the world, where the air is no longer a gas, but a solid shimmering crystal of absolute stillness. Here the Snow Queen's palace stands as a monument to the eternal void, its walls constructed from the compressed breath of glaciers, and its floors made of 1,000 frozen lakes. There are no doors here, and no windows, for there is nothing outside but the infinite white. The halls are vast, empty, and silent, illuminated by a cold blue light that seems to emanate from the ice itself. In the center of the largest hall, sitting upon a throne of jagged sapphire, is Kay. He is motionless, a figure of pale marble in a landscape of silver. Around him, the floor is covered with sharp, flat pieces of ice-thin, translucent shards that he moves with a slow, rhythmic, and mechanical precision. He is engaged in the ice puzzle of reason, attempting to arrange these frozen fragments into a single perfect word, eternity. To his frozen mind, this word represents the ultimate achievement, a state of being where nothing changes, nothing decays, and nothing feels. Kay sits among the ice blocks, his focus so intense that the world of the living has become a forgotten myth. He moves the shards back and forth, creating intricate geometric patterns that shift and realign like the stars in a winter sky. The logic of the ice is his only companion, a cold and beautiful system of angles and edges that requires no heart to understand. He is trying to spell a concept that is larger than time itself, a task that has no beginning and no end. The repetition of his movements, the sliding of the ice, the alignment of the corners, the quiet contemplation of the shapes, creates a viral loop of thought that bypasses the need for reason. There is a transcendental peace in this labor, a state of being where the self is lost in the pursuit of a crystalline perfection. The hall is a vacuum of emotion, a place where the weight of the human soul has been traded for the lightness of the void. This is the moment of the great reveal. The ice is freezing, its temperature far below anything the human body should be able to endure, but Kay no longer feels the sting. The sliver of glass in his eye and the lump of ice in his heart have synchronized his being with the environment. He has become a part of the palace, a creature of the eternal cold who finds comfort in the lack of heat. The blue light reflects off his pale skin, turning him into a shimmering ghost of the boy he once was. There is no pain here, no shivering, and no longing. There is only the absolute unyielding stillness of the north, a peace so profound that it feels like a heavy indigo blanket covering the entire universe. The cold is not an enemy, it is a sanctuary, a state of perfect equilibrium where the restless spirit finally finds a place to rest among the stars. The geometry of the ice is perfect and still, a visual mantra that stabilizes the mind. You can see the clean lines of the shards, the sharp clarity of the points, and the way the light refracts through the frozen layers to create 1,000 tiny rainbows of cold fire. The symmetry is hypnotic, a repetitive pattern of squares, triangles and hexagons that fills the field of vision until the boundaries of the room dissolve. You are no longer watching Kay, you are part of the puzzle itself, a fragment of ice drifting in a sea of blue light. The world is reduced to this single beautiful word that cannot yet be spelled, a mystery that requires no solution, only presence. The stillness is absolute, a heavy weight that presses down on the eyelids, inviting the mind to let go of the why and simply exist in the ease. But even in the heart of this frozen eternity, the warmth of the living world finds a way to penetrate the walls of ice. Gerda enters the hall, her presence a soft golden glow against the sapphire shadows. She sees Kay sitting in his icy trance, and she does not speak. She simply kneels beside him and weeps. This is the bridge to the homecoming. A single warm tear falls from her cheek and strikes Kay directly on the chest. It is a tiny liquid spark of fire that burns through the layers of frost, melting the lump of ice in his heart and washing away the sliver of glass from his eye. The frozen heart begins to beat once more, a slow, rhythmic pulse of life that shatters the silence of the hall. The puzzle of eternity is forgotten as the warmth of human love reclaims the boy from the void, turning the cold blue light into the golden glow of a rising sun. The return journey begins not with a race, but with a slow, rhythmic walk hand in hand back through the vast, unfolding tapestry of the seasons. As Kay and Gerda leave the Snow Queen's palace behind, the world begins to bloom in reverse, the white wilderness giving way to the soft mists of spring and the golden abundance of summer. They walk through the meadows where the flowers once whispered their dreams, and past the river that carried the red shoes toward the sea. The landscape moves past them like a gentle revolving scene on a music box, each step bringing them closer to the center of their own peace. The air grows warmer with every mile, becoming thick and sweet with the scent of the earth and the breath of the roses. There is no urgency in their pace, only the steady, comforting cadence of two hearts beating in perfect unison, moving toward the ultimate safety of the place where they began. They reach the old town and climb the narrow, familiar stairs to the attic room under the roof. As they push open the heavy wooden door, they find that everything is exactly as they left it. The great clock in the corner still ticks with a slow, patient, and rhythmic tick-tock that marks the pulse of the home. The sun filters through the window in long, dusty beams of gold, illuminating the worn floorboards and the heavy bookshelves. This is the moment of the sacred homecoming. They look at each other and realize that although they have traveled through the entire world and seen the face of the eternal cold, they have returned to the same spot. They are grown now, tall and strong, yet in this golden light they have become as children again, pure in heart, still in spirit, and entirely at home in the present moment. The journey has come full circle, the long road leading back to the simplicity of a shared life. In the corner of the room, sitting in her high-backed chair, is the grandmother. She is reading from the large ancient book, her voice a low melodic hum that blends with the sunlight and the ticking of the clock. She does not look up as they enter, for she has always known they would return. Her presence is the ultimate anchor, a monument of enduring love and wisdom that makes the attic feel like a sanctuary beyond the reach of time. The room is filled with a heavy, drowsy warmth, a combination of the sun on the wood, the scent of the roses blooming in the boxes outside, and the steady, rhythmic flow of the grandmother's reading. You can feel the weight of this peace settling over the attic like a heavy velvet curtain, muffling the world outside, and creating a pocket of absolute security where nothing can ever harm you again. The story is coming to its natural, beautiful end, and the mind is ready to surrender to the deep, dreamless sleep that awaits. The roses are in full bloom now, their crimson petals opening wide to catch the last of the evening light, filling the attic with a fragrance so thick and sweet it feels like a physical embrace. The grandmother's voice grows softer and slower, the words becoming a gentle, indistinguishable murmur that carries you across the final threshold. There is no more road to travel, no more puzzles to solve, and no more winters to endure. The hearth is warm, the door is locked, and the world is at rest. The bridge has been crossed, and you are now safe in the heart of the home, drifting into a state of total blissful darkness, where the only sound is your own steady, peaceful breath. The story ends here, the roses bloom forever, and you are, at last, deeply and completely asleep.